Is there any point in a people carrier if it's a really small one? It's a fair question that Super Mini MPV models in the Nissan Note, Citroën C3, Picasso and Vauxhall Meriva segment have often struggled to answer. With Ford's B-Max, we have at last a credible response to that query, its unique design and unrivaled versatility offering more ways to use a car of just 4 meters in length than you might ever have thought possible. The smallest sort of people carrier is definitely evolving. We've long had so-called Super Mini MPVs, cars like Nissan's Note, slotting into a market sector below that of compact C-Max and Scenic-sized designs. But usually they've offered little more than a slightly pumped-up take on the usual small car theme. New brands entering this segment needed to try harder. So we saw Citroën's rounded but squirrel C3 Picasso redefining the amount of space that a car of this kind could offer. Skoda giving us avant-garde styling with their Roomster, and Vauxhall delivering rear doors that open the wrong way out with their Meriva. Interesting though these various design approaches may have been, none of them really advanced the small people carrying proposition very far. But here's a car that does, Ford's B-Max. Launched here in the autumn of 2012, it scores on its doors, but in a very different way to its rivals. This is the first car in the Super Mini MPV segment to use sliding side doors. And even more uniquely, the first to do away completely with a central B-pillar. So that with both doors open, you've got an enormous 1.5 meters of cabin aperture width. A far more innovative design than the blue oval brought us with this model's direct predecessor, the Fusion. And there's equal brilliance beneath the bonnet, with the option of a 3-cylinder 1-litre EcoBoost petrol engine that at last provides a decent alternative to diesel. The idea, it seems, is to attract the kind of buyer who likes the idea of the versatility that you'd get in a C-Max style compact MPV, but wants something cheaper to run and easier to park. Something like this? Let's find out. Now, Ford models are generally great to drive, and most of the reason why can be found in one thing: chassis stiffness. Take that away and you neutralise one of the blue oval's strongest selling points. But isn't that exactly what's happened with this B-Max? With no central B-pillar to stiffen the chassis, you'd expect the whole structure to be flexing about all over the place. You'd expect driving disappointment, but as you'll find once on the move, you don't get it. I suppose it's easy to be impressed when you start with such low expectations, but this thing really does confound all of your preconceptions. For a start, it's a people carrier, and worse, one with sliding doors, previously a surefire recipe for dynamic dullness in any car you care to name. Yet once you get going, this Ford feels frisky, even fun, certainly fulsome in the manner in which it responds to the way you want to drive. It helps that the basics are right. You sit quite high up, certainly more commandingly than you would in a Fiesta, with everything you need perfectly positioned all around you. And on the move, all-round visibility is great. As for that B-pillar business, well, forget it. It's not that there isn't one, it's just that you can't see it. Clever design has integrated the central pillar structure into the leading edges of the front and rear doors where they come together. When shut, they clamp themselves to the body very tightly and become part of the stiffness of the car. So much so, in fact, that this B-Max can boast a body stiffness that's actually greater than that of the Fiesta Super Mini, upon which it's based. And a stiffer ride too? Well, actually no. Ride quality is one of the best things about this car, which is all the more surprising given that the engineers didn't really have anything too exotic to work with. There's a suppleness to the suspension, which I think is probably better than in anything else that Ford makes, soaking up terrible town tarmac, yet composed enough to keep body roll well controlled on the kind of twisty roads you'll enjoy yourself on, thanks to the standard torque vectoring system that aids corner turning, and the well-weighted electric power steering. No, the body control isn't quite as good as it would be in, say, a Ford Focus family hatch. The tall shape can't be tied down quite as well as that. But I'd go as far as to say that new standards have been set here in the ride and handling department for super mini MPVs, which is something of an accolade for a car that's really designed for an urban environment, a place where this B-Max begins to make all kinds of sense. For a start, you get the kind of view out that would be denied to a typical super mini driver, so you can see traffic jams forming a long way ahead and, if necessary, reroute. And because of the restricted width, you can very easily nudge between width restrictions, nip into gaps into the traffic, or sidle into multi-storey bays that would be difficult or impossible in a larger vehicle. Once you're in those parking spaces, the front and rear extremities of the car can be difficult to judge, so the optional parking camera package may well be a worthwhile investment. And under the bonnet, well, there's nothing too impressive at the bottom end of the range, where the choices on offer remind you of how Ford's technology used to be. These include a labouring 90 PS 1.4 litre petrol unit and an auto-only 105 PS 1.6 that's a petrol unit mainly offered for older or disabled buyers. Inevitably, the units you'd really want are the pricier ones further up the range, but if dealer discount or your budget enables you to stretch to one of them, then there's plenty to admire, most notably with the cleverest petrol power plant on the planet, Ford's 3-cylinder 1-litre EcoBoost unit, offered with its distinctive 3-cylinder thrum and a choice to B-Max buyers of either 100 or 120 PS outputs. We first saw this fitted to the larger Focus family hatch, and though here it's accessible via a gearbox with 5 rather than 6 speeds, it's still a mighty impressive piece of kit. The higher powered version combining an 11-second 0 to 60 sprint time with nearly 60 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and a green-fingered 114 grams per kilometre of CO2. With those kind of figures, why on earth would you want to drive a diesel? If you still do, then newest of the pair of TDCi engines on offer is a 75 PS 1.5 litre diesel developed for use across all of Ford's small car models. Though frugal and clean, it is somewhat slow, taking nearly 17 seconds to get from rest to 60. A better all-round proposition is the 95 PS 1.6 litre TDCi engine that manages rest to 60 in 13.9 seconds on the way to a top speed of 108 miles an hour and offers a bit more all-round performance punch. Imagine the effect of shrinking Ford's large S-Max people carrier in a hot wash, and if you're familiar with that model, you'll get a pretty good idea of, well, pretty much what we have here. A design 11 centimetres longer than a Fiesta Super Mini, but 32 centimetres shorter than the C-Max, the next model up in Ford's people carrying hierarchy. Now, this is the latest interpretation of the brand's kinetic design language, and by and large the stylists have done a pretty good job in disguising what must be a very awkward shape with its short wheelbase and tall body. There's plenty to distract your attention from that anyway, with unique B-Max touches wherever you look. The Aston Martin style front grille might be the first distinguishing factor that takes your attention, but more important of course is the issue that dominates discussion whenever talk turns to this car: the doors. The front ones open normally, but those at the rear slide aside on cleverly concealed runners, so that parents need have no more fears of their offspring resculpting the side of adjacent cars in tight supermarket spaces. And with both side doors open, you're ready to admire this car's party piece, the absence of the kind of central B-pillar that virtually every other car in the world has to have for structural rigidity. Now here, that same rigidity is provided by the edges of the doors themselves. when they shut tightly together, clamping themselves against the body. Now, expect to see this ingenious so-called easy access design copied on all kinds of future family models. For what it creates is a car that's really easy to get in and out of, and also extremely easy to get things in and out of. After all, with both doors open, you've got an aperture that's up to 1.5 meters wide, into which you can slide items that are up to 2.34 meters long if you take advantage of the option of this fold flat front passenger seat. So IKEA flat packs, there'll be no problem. Bicycles, yes, you can load them in from the side too. Though bigger than that of a rival Nissan Note, this is, at 318 litres, about 15 to 20% smaller than you'll find in most other Super Mini MPV models. But you can at least make the most of what you have by specifying a load area organiser that'll help separate your eggs from your iron brew. Standard across the range is this adjustable load floor that you can set to create a completely level loading area for the times when you want to push forward the 60-40 split folding rear bench, something you can do in an easy one-handed motion to free up as much as 1,386 litres of total fresh air. This car, though, has been primarily packaged for people and the lives they lead. Thanks to the pillarless easy access system, its simplicity itself to lean in and install a child seat or help in an aged relative. Once inside, there's an airy feel, even if you don't opt for the full-length panoramic glass roof. More importantly, despite the diminutive 1.8 metre width, there's just about enough room here to accommodate 3 fully sized adults who will enjoy more head, leg and knee room than most rivals would offer, despite the lack of the kind of sliding rear seats that some of those competitors would offer you. Children, of course, who are less likely to complain about the lack of a central armrest, are the more likely occupants back here, which might lead you to wonder about safety issues should the car start off without one of the sliding doors being fully shut. Now, it's an issue. These doors are pretty heavy things at 55 pounds in weight, and they do slam shut with some force if left open during sudden braking. But there'd be a loud warning noise to alert the driver before you even got near that happening, and in any case any responsible parent would have securely strapped his or her offspring in at that point. And up front, well, with an overall vehicle height that's 12 centimetres higher than that of a Fiesta, you get all the benefits of what Ford calls a higher command driving position. Now, the seatbelt here has, of course, to be attached to the seat itself, there being no B-pillar behind your shoulder to attach it to. And from this pleasingly prominent position, you marshal the controls of a dashboard that's easy to operate if you speak fluent Ford. You've got adjustability up and down and in and out for the steering wheel, and ahead of you there's a twin-dialed instrument binnacle topped with a lovely soft touch plastic type material that's in contrast to the harder, scratchier surfaces that are used on the door tops, the glove box lid and the centre console. At least build quality from the Romanian factory seems strong. Ascend the range and there's a huge difference in cabin ambience, from the plainness of entry-level models to the plushness of top variants that feature a ritzy Sony branded 8-speaker stereo system. Distinctive features include the wing-like design of the upper instrument panel that reaches out to the doors, and this prominent centre console that flows between the front seats. Storage space, well, it would have been nice to have had a rubberized compartment specifically designed for your smartphone, but otherwise all of the usual nooks and crannies are provided. B-Max pricing starts at around £13,000 and tops out at around £19,000, targeting this car precisely at the 2 Super Mini based MPVs that probably represent its closest competition, Citroen's C3 Picasso and Vauxhall's Meriva. Now, both these two rivals, like other similarly priced and targeted contenders in this segment like Kia's Venga and Hyundai's iX20, will offer you slightly more space and will probably save you a few £100 model for model. But all of those lack this Ford's engine technology, so your running costs will be higher. And of course, they all also lack the convenience and flexibility of this B-Max's sliding side door arrangement. Now, as for the other strong seller in this sector, Nissan's Note, well, yes, it's significantly cheaper, but it's also significantly smaller, less versatile and less efficient. All of which may well see you concluding that your search for a more versatile and efficient compact family car should start with this one. If so, then I'd point you first at the mid-range Zetec trim level that over 60% of B-Max buyers choose, and at the frugal yet frisky 100 PS 1 litre EcoBoost petrol engine, a combination that will demand of you a budget of around about £16,500, depending on the final spec that you choose. Now, most of the other main contenders in the Super Mini MPV sector are technologically a step behind this particular variant. If you do want a direct alternative, then I'd probably point you at Toyota's Verso S 1.33 VVTi as a similar but slightly less efficient package. As for diesel, well, the frugality of Ford's EcoBoost petrol engine technology really should make you question the need for it. After all, you'll need to be covering what would be an unusually high mileage for a car of this kind to justify paying the £800 premium that Ford will ask of you over the equivalent 1 litre petrol EcoBoost model to get yourself into the least expensive and significantly slower 1.5 TDCi diesel B-Max. That'll probably take you over the £17,000 price point, a level at which, of course, you could have your pick of plush, pokey Super Minis. Still, with decently specified and performing Focus-sized family hatchbacks costing the best part of £20,000, you can see why this B-Max would appeal to customers looking to take a different, more versatile and more cost-effective approach. Indeed, I'd suggest that many buyers faced with £20,000 list pricing for a fully fledged C-Max or Scenic-sized 5-seater compact MPV would be just as happy with a B-Max. The moral is probably to try one before you buy something else. If, having considered all of this, you do settle on this Ford, then you'll probably have done enough research to conclude that the very top and the very bottom of the B-Max lineup has limited appeal. After all, at entry level, the spec's pretty basic, the engine technology is quite old, and you can't order many of the really clever options. While at the top of the range, the most powerful petrol and diesel engines, that's the 120 PS 1 litre EcoBoost petrol and the 95 PS 1.6 TDCi diesel, come wedded to pricey spec levels that will be beyond the pockets of most potential buyers. The result is that most B-Max customers will end up shopping in a narrow £16,000 to £17,500 bracket amongst mid-spec Zetec trimmed 100 PS 1 litre EcoBoost petrol models or 1.5 TDCi diesel variants, all of which will come reasonably equipped with features like front fog lights, alloy wheels that are 15-inch in size, a heated windscreen, a height adjustable driver's seat, leather trim for the steering wheel and gear knob, air conditioning, a 6-speaker stereo system with a digital radio, a trip computer and a hill start assist system that will stop you drifting backwards on uphill junctions. As for options, well, I'd suggest that there are a few you really should consider specifying to complete the ownership experience and, in all probability, protect the resale value of your car. See what your Ford dealership can do with helping you out with this little list, most of which are only available from Zetec trim level upwards and which, as features ordered individually, would collectively cost around £900. A Thatcham Category 1 alarm, a full-size spare wheel as opposed to an inflator kit, the City Pack with its reverse parking cameras and power folding mirrors, the Tidy Pack with its seat back storage nets, the luggage bay organiser and the low bay reversible mat that'll disguise muddy boot marks because you can just flip it over, and most importantly, Ford Sync, the company's voice activated in-car connectivity system. The Sync package alone is priced at around £250, and I'd suggest that it'll be money well spent. Via this you'll be able to Bluetooth connect in your mobile phone, but that's just the start. With this setup, the 6-speaker stereo system will have USB, iPod and AUX in connectivity and will respond to voice commands. It'll read text messages aloud to you, and should you be unfortunate enough to have an accident, then it'll automatically call the emergency services, giving them your exact location using the language of whatever country you happen to be in. It's very clever indeed, and it's a feature I can't imagine buying this car without. Now, that even telematics should be targeted towards safety is appropriate, for so much of this car's design is. The way, for example, that the sliding door system has been designed not only to equal the side impact protection of a conventional car, but to better it. Then there's the active city stop system, a feature that many potential buyers are going to want to specify to soften or even avoid the consequences of a low-speed urban impact. Now, it all works courtesy of a very clever radar mounted at the top of the windscreen here that constantly scans the road ahead of you for potential collision risks. Now, if the car in front of you has unexpectedly stopped, or you're approaching very quickly a stationary vehicle, then the system will warn you and prime the brakes. If you don't respond or aren't able to, then at speeds of up to 19 miles an hour, the brakes will automatically be applied. It's not foolproof, but it may very well save your no claims bonus. Apart from active city stop, there are of course all the usual electronic driving aids with ESP stability control fitted right across the range, and an anti-lock braking system that in panic stops, aided by a standard brake assist setup, will flash the hazard warning lights to alert following motorists. If all that's not enough to help you avoid an accident, then there's ISOFIX child seat fastenings and a full roster of airbags, twin drivers, side, curtain and even driver's knee airbags right across the range. Now, though it's possible that you might end up paying a little more for this B-Max than you would for an older, less versatile Super Mini MPV design, you'll start to claw back that premium really quite quickly once the miles begin to click by. That's because, provided you steer clear of the entry-level 1.4 litre petrol variant, this car is the most efficient choice in its segment. Even without the auto start-stop system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights, the volume 100 PS 1 litre EcoBoost petrol engine still delivers diesel-like returns, managing 55.4 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and putting out 119 grams per kilometre of CO2. Adding start-stop to this engine makes quite a lot of difference, as you can see with it installed in the Pokia 120 PS EcoBoost 1 litre petrol unit. That manages 57.7 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and puts out 114 grams per kilometre of CO2. But if you really want diesel-like returns, then you really want a diesel. The 1.5 TDCi manages 68.9 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 109 grams per kilometre of CO2. While, courtesy of start-stop, the 1.6 TDCi manages 70.6 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 104 grams per kilometre of CO2. These are figures that are up to 20% better than you get from equivalent rival competitors, and there's plenty of cleverness on hand to make sure that you get somewhere close to them on a regular basis. The gear shift indicator on the dash for more efficient gear changes is something you might expect, but Ford's Eco Mode system might come as more of a pleasant surprise. What's this? Well, it's a neat piece of software that analyses the effects of your driving behaviour on fuel consumption, taking into account speed, gear changes, anticipation and length of journey. Now, based on all this information, the system will be able to offer you advice on how to drive more efficiently. What else? Well, the 3-year 60,000 mile warranty and the 1 year of roadside assistance aren't anything to write home about. But at least insurance should be affordable, 1 to 50 groupings falling into the 5 to 8 bracket. As for depreciation, well, options prices are reasonable, so it's hard to put so much extra kit into this car that your residuals will be shot to pieces. Expect to get somewhere between 35 to 39% of your original purchase price back after the usual typical 3-year or 30,000 mile ownership period, which is about what you'd expect for a typical small mass market car. Now, it's a tad ironic, given the name, that Ford's B-Max is missing very little, apart from a B-pillar. Were it not for that, this would be a neat, well thought out, but generally unremarkable addition to a super mini MPV segment the Blue Oval has never properly addressed. As it is, this one stroke of design genius has set this model apart and established it as a class leader. We've long known that for many modern families, ultimate space is less important than versatility, a fact underlined here by the ease with which this pillarless design makes loading and unloading of people and packages so much more straightforward. You can see why Ford reckons that over 40% of B-Max buyers will have previously owned a much larger vehicle, and why over 60% of them will be new to the brand. Of course, we've had cars designed around doors before. Few of them had much else to offer. Here, though, it's different. Class-leading safety, the sync connectivity system's cleverness, and EcoBoost engine technology that delivers petrol power with diesel returns. All these things make this model a benchmark in its segment. Other rivals may be slightly bigger or more affordable, but if you can stretch to one, in this Ford, you've what, for me, is the perfect growing family's second car. And finally, a small people carrier that makes perfect sense.